I have lived long enough to know that life rarely warns you before it strikes. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened that quiet Thursday afternoon. The day a simple trip to buy a birthday cake cracked my world open. My name is Miriam Hull, and I am 68 years old. I've spent most of my life working with my hands, first in a textile factory, then sewing from home to support my son after my husband died. My palms are rough, my knuckles swollen, but they've always been steady. Until that day. I was walking through the supermarket aisles, the smell of warm bread floating in the air, thinking only of my daughter-in-law's birthday. Claire was turning 34. Our relationship had always been polite but cold, like shaking hands through a pane of glass. Still, I believed in trying. I believed that kindness eventually softened people, even if slowly. So I had dressed nicely in my favorite teal blouse, pressed my slacks, curled my silver hair, and applied a little rose lipstick. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, just hoping my son, Daniel, would see that his mother still cared about being part of his life. I found a lovely lemon chiffon cake, simple, light, and sweet. $22. It wasn't cheap for my small pension, but I told myself that family is worth a little sacrifice. I imagined my grandchildren, Liam and Ava, clapping their hands when they saw it. They always loved dessert. I placed the cake on the checkout counter, where a young cashier named Evan always greeted me with a warm smile. But today his smile was missing. He scanned the cake, glanced around nervously, and swallowed hard before leaning toward me. Double quotes. Mrs. Miriam. He whispered so quietly, I almost didn't hear him. I think you need to know something. I froze. What is it, dear? He lowered his voice even more. Your daughter-in-law's mom, Mrs. Veronica. She was here earlier. She bought the same exact cake. And, she was on the phone. My stomach tightened. What did she say? Evan hesitated, torn between wanting to protect me and fearing he was overstepping. Finally, he exhaled and said it. She said, when she brings that cheap supermarket cake, reject it in front of everyone. Let her see who the real grandmother is. It felt like the ground tilted under my feet. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. The humiliation wasn't even happening yet, but I felt it hot, sharp, suffocating. Are you sure? I whispered. Evan nodded, looking pained. I'm really sorry, ma'am. I just didn't think it was right to keep quiet. I thanked him, paid with hands that trembled, and lifted the cake as though it was suddenly heavier. But instead of heading out the front doors like usual, something inside me, some instinct I didn't know, I still had pulled me toward the back exit near the delivery area. I stepped outside into the sunlit alleyway behind the store, a place where only employees usually went. I tapped myself behind a stack of crates, my heart thudding loudly in my ears. 5 minutes later, a shiny white crossover pulled up right in front of the store. I recognized the vehicle instantly. Veronica. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses, glossy lipstick, and a sleek burgundy dress. Everything about her polished and expensive. She opened her trunk, unloading a mountain of shopping bags, designer stores, luxury boutiques, shiny boxes. And right there in the center, a cake identical to mine. My throat tightened painfully. Then she pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and put it on speaker. Claire, sweetheart. She cooed. Hi, Mom. Did you get everything? Oh, yes, Veronica said in a smug, sweetened voice. And remember when she shows up with her little bargain cake? You know what to do. Claire laughed. Of course, she replied. We'll make sure she learns her place. I felt something in me twist, then harden, like metal forging under fire, right there behind the crates, with the sunlight glaring off the pavement, and their cruel laughter echoing between the cars. I realized that what I thought was family was a carefully staged illusion, and they were preparing to break me, but they had no idea what was waking inside me. And if you think this is the worst part, wait until you see what I discovered next. Remained behind the delivery crates long after Veronica's car door shut. The air smelled faintly of cardboard and pavement, and the sun pressed heat into my back, but none of it mattered. I needed those moments not to hide, but to steady my breath before my heart collapsed under the weight of everything I had overheard. From the shadowed corner, I watched Veronica glide around her white crossover with the elegance of someone who believed the world bent to her convenience. Her sunglasses perched perfectly, her lipstick untouched, her jewelry sparkling even in the fading light. She carried herself like a woman who had never been told no, and never expected to be. She opened her trunk, shifting bags that flashed designer logos. Between them sat the identical lemon cake, nestled like a trophy. My own box suddenly felt heavier in my hands. Then she made another phone call. Her voice wasn't loud, but the occasional breeze stretched her words across the parking lot. Yes, Daniel believes I'm covering the down payment. 50,000. Just like we planned. My heartbeat stuttered. She continued almost lazily, as though discussing a recipe instead of my son's future. Once the deed is signed in Claire's name, he'll have no way to change it. He'll pay the mortgage, of course, but the house, it'll belong solely to Claire. Just how it should be. My stomach twisted. They weren't just planning to humiliate me, they were building a trap for my son so cleverly, disguised that he couldn't even see, the edges closing around him. But Veronica wasn't done. The woman has already emptied her pockets. The land she sold for his college, useless now. And that 10,000 she gave last year. Please. I told Claire to make up something dramatic, so she'd hand it over without hesitation. My breath snagged in my throat. I had given that money believing my grandson might be fighting for his health. Claire had sobbed on the phone. She said the treatment was urgent. I had believed her. Every word. Every tear. Now I saw the truth. I wasn't helping family, was financing a lie. Veronica's tone cooled further. She served her purpose. Once Claire has the house, Daniel will naturally drift away. We won't need the old woman involved in anything. She's practically fading already. My fingers dug into the cake box. Not out of weakness, out of something awakening inside me. Something sharp, cold, and stronger than I had been in years. Eventually, Veronica ended her call and drove off, completely unaware that every word she said now lived inside me, like a match waiting to be struck. Stepped out from behind the crates. My legs trembled, but my resolve had never been clearer. The parking lot shimmered under the sun, and my reflection in my car window startled me, not because I looked broken, but because I looked alive in a way I hadn't in months. I placed the cake on the passenger seat with care. That simple dessert was bought with sincerity and love, things they could never purchase, mimic, or destroy. I sat in my car for a long time, my mind sorting the facts. The financial trap. The false emergency. The scheme to sever me from my son. The plan to push me out of their lives completely. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was fragile. They forgot that a quiet woman is often the one who learns the most. What I did next wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it altered everything that followed. Their plans weren't as airtight as they believed, and all it took was one step from me to start unraveling them from the inside. And that step, the one they never saw coming, is exactly what set the entire house of lies. Trembling, I drove away from the supermarket slowly, as though the slightest jolt might break the fragile dam holding back everything inside me. The lemon cake sat beside me, perfectly still, while the storm inside my chest churned without mercy. The road blurred a little as I blinked away the sting in my eyes. Not just sadness, not just betrayal. It was something deeper, like watching the foundation of your life crack open in real time. I pulled into a quiet park a few blocks away, parking beneath a tall elm tree that cast a soft shade. For a moment, I simply leaned back in the seat and let the silence settle. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. More than anything, I needed clarity. The voices of Veronica and Claire echoed through my head. The cruel mocking, the fake emergencies, the financial schemes, the plan to erase me from Daniel's life like a mark on a chalkboard. Each word replayed vividly, stamping itself deeper and deeper. It wasn't just humiliation. It wasn't just manipulation. It was a coordinated effort to push me out of my son's world entirely. And the worst part, I had helped them do it. I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart thud steadily beneath my palm. I had given everything: land, money, time, love, thinking I was supporting my family. Instead, I had been feeding wolves wearing silk scarves. I looked at the cake again, the pale frosting catching a slant of afternoon sun. Something about its innocence made my throat ache. I had to decide. Would I walk into that birthday celebration and allow them to humiliate me publicly? Or would I protect what remained of my dignity? One truth became clear. I could not walk into that house pretending everything was fine. But I also couldn't avoid the reality that my son was being led into a devastating financial trap. And then a thought came quiet. The undeniable. Daniel needed to know the truth. Not someday. Not eventually. Not when the damage was irreversible. He needed to know now. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone. I stared at the screen for a long time, my finger hovering above his name. Daniel Harley. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. Then I dialed. It rang once. Twice. A third time. Mom? His voice was cheerful, distracted, as though nothing unusual was happening. Hey, are you on your way? The kids are excited. My breath faltered for a moment at the sound of him. He had always sounded like this when he was younger, warm, open-hearted, trusting. The little boy who once ran into my arms after school and told me everything. But now, I wasn't sure how much of that boy remained. Daniel, I began carefully. I need to talk to you before I come. Is everything okay? His tone shifted slightly, still kind, but laced with impatience, the kind I had begun hearing more in recent years. I'm not sure, I answered honestly. I learned something today. Something I think you need to hear. He sighed softly. Mum, can this wait? Everyone's already here. We're setting up. Claire's busy, the kids are hyped. It's a lot. Just come, okay? His words tightened something in my chest. A subtle dismissal. Unintentional maybe, but painfully familiar. Daniel, I said gently, this can't wait. It concerns the house, and the down payment, and some things your mother-in-law has been saying. There was a pause on the line. A heavy, weighted pause. What things? He asked slowly. I swallowed. Please meet me. Just for a few minutes. Away from everyone. He hesitated. I could hear voices in the background, the clinking of glasses, children laughing, footsteps. A party in full motion. Mom, is this really necessary right now? I closed my eyes. Yes. Before you sign anything. Before anything becomes permanent. Another silence. Longer this time. Then Daniel exhaled sharply. All right. Tell me where. Relief trembled through me. We agreed on a quiet spot near the park, neutral ground. Away from Claire. Away from Veronica. Away from any influence. A place where he could hear me without the noise of their world clouding his judgment. I hung up, gripping the steering wheel tightly. This conversation could break everything open. Or it could break me. But either way, the truth could no longer stay buried. I started the car and eased back onto the road, heading toward the place where the future of our family would be decided not by Veronica, not by Claire, but by truth at last. But what Daniel said when he arrived was nothing like what I expected, and it changed everything that came after. Parked beneath the same elm tree where I'd waited before, the branches swaying lightly in the afternoon breeze. My hands were still unsteady as I placed the cake carefully on the back seat. It felt safer there, almost like putting away a fragile part of myself before facing whatever was about to happen. A few minutes passed before Daniel's familiar grey sedan pulled into the lot. He parked 2 spaces away, hesitated, then stepped out. He looked handsome in his simple button-down shirt, broad shoulders, neatly trimmed hair, but his eyes carried something weary, something I hadn't noticed before. Maybe because I had been too busy trying to hold on. He approached slowly. "Mom?" I managed a small smile. "Thank you for coming." He glanced around as though unsure why we were meeting here instead of at the house. "What's going on? You sounded serious." I nodded. I didn't want to talk about this in front of everyone. Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. It was a gesture he'd had since he was a boy. He used it whenever he felt caught between 2 worlds. "Well? What is it?" I motioned toward the bench nearby. "Let's sit." He followed, but reluctantly. Once we sat, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, waiting. I folded my hands tightly in my lap. "Daniel, I overheard something today." "From who?" "From your mother-in-law." His jaw tensed. I continued, choosing each word carefully. "I overheard Veronica talking about the house, about the down payment, about how she doesn't actually have the money she told you she'd contribute." Daniel's expression flickered, but he said nothing. "She said you believe she's giving $50,000. She said by the time you realize she isn't, the deed will already be in Claire's name alone." He inhaled slowly, his shoulders tightening. "Mum, she also talked about the $10,000 I gave Claire." My voice trembled. She admitted they made up the emergency, that Liam was never sick, that it was a way to get money out of me. Daniel looked away then, jaw clenched so tightly a muscle twitch. For a few long moments he said nothing. I placed a hand on his arm gently, cautiously. "Daniel, they're using you. And they're using me. They're—" He pulled his arm away, not harshly, but enough that it felt like a blade. "Mom," he said quietly, "don't do this." The words hit me harder than any insult ever could. "Don't do what?" I whispered. He exhaled heavily. "Please don't start something today. Claire's family has been under a lot of pressure. Veronica may say things she doesn't mean. You always take things too personally." I stared at him. My breath caught in my throat. "I'm telling you what I heard with my own ears," I said softly. He shook his head. "Mum, Claire would never lie about Liam being sick. Ever. She loves him more than anything." I swallowed. "Daniel, she lied." "They both lied." His eyes flashed with frustration. "Do you hear what you're saying? Accusing my wife and her mother of manipulating us, of scamming us?" "Mom, that sounds it sounds paranoid." The words felt like a strike. "A paranoid woman," I repeated quietly, "who sold her land for your education, who gave you everything she had, who trusted the emergency story because she loves her grandson." His expression faltered for the briefest moment, but then it hardened again. "Mum," he said firmly, "I think you misunderstood something you overheard. Veronica likes to exaggerate. I'm sure it wasn't what you think." I shook my head slowly. "Daniel, please, listen to me." But he stood, not angrily, just defeated. I can't get into this right now. Not today. Not before Claire's birthday. He stepped back toward his car. A part of me shattered quietly inside. Daniel, I whispered. They are setting you up. I heard every word. He froze, but just for a second. Then he opened his car door and murmured, Mum, please don't ruin tonight. The slam of the door echoed through me like thunder. I stood there long after he drove away, staring at the space where his car had been. My hands trembled, my breath uneven. I had hoped he would hear me. Instead, he had walked away believing strangers over his own mother. But pain has a strange way of turning into clarity. If Daniel wouldn't listen now, I would have to show him the truth in a way no one could deny. And the proof I uncovered next didn't just expose their lies, it set off a chain reaction the entire family would. I stayed in the park after Daniel left, staring at the road long after his car disappeared into the late afternoon light. The breeze stirred the leaves overhead, carrying with it the faint smell of sun-baked grass. I felt strangely hollow, like someone had scooped out the center of me, leaving only the edges behind. My son, my only child, had looked me in the eyes and chosen to believe that I was confused, dramatic, mistaken. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't intentional. But it cut deeper than anything Veronica had said. He didn't think I was lying. He just didn't think I was capable of understanding the truth. That kind of dismissal wounds the soul. I sat on the bench, breathing slowly, forcing the shards of my heart to settle. Don't ruin tonight, he had said, as if I were the threat. As if I were the unstable one. But mothers know when their children are standing inches away from danger. And I would not ignore what I had heard. After several minutes of stillness, a thought came to me. A quiet thought, but sharp and clear. If Daniel wouldn't accept my words, I needed proof that spoke louder than anything I could say. I reached into my purse and took out my phone. Earlier, when I had heard Veronica's first cruel words in the store, something instinctive had pushed me to tap the record button. I hadn't done it out of strategy. I had done it out of self-preservation, wanting to capture something too painful to repeat. Now that recording felt like a lifeline. But I needed more. I needed undeniable evidence, something that would reveal the entire truth, not just the pieces. And that was when I remembered something. The promissory note. Months ago, when I gave Claire the $10,000 for the fabricated emergency, she had asked me to sign a small agreement, just so everything is documented for insurance, she had said sweetly. I hadn't questioned it. I was too shaken, too terrified for my grandson. But the document had my handwriting, her signature, the date, and the stated purpose. If the purpose was proven false, then the lie itself became undeniable. Hope flickered inside me. I stood, gathering my things. The sun was beginning to dip, painting gold over the park. I pulled out my keys and hurried to the car. I drove home faster than usual, my heart thudding with something between dread and determination. When I reached my small house, the one filled with memories of Daniel as a baby, Jonathan's laughter, and life before all this, everything felt heavier than usual. Inside, I went straight to the drawer in my bedroom. I kept important papers, their birth certificates, old photographs, land documents, and tucked in a small folder, the promissory note. I opened it carefully. There it was. My name. Claire's name. The date. The purpose. My hands tightened around the paper. If I could show Daniel the recording and this document side by side, even he couldn't deny the truth. Not when it became tangible. Not when it became fact instead of accusation. I placed the note in my handbag and took a deep breath. I wasn't going to the party as a guest anymore. I was going as a woman carrying the truth heavy. Painful, undeniable. But before leaving, I did something I hadn't planned. I sat on the edge of my bed and allowed myself to cry. Not loud, uncontrolled sobs. Just silent tears that slipped down my cheeks with surprising gentleness. They weren't tears of weakness. They were tears clearing the way for strength. After wiping my face, I stood and smoothed my blouse. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were tired but fierce. My posture straighter than before. Something in me had shifted from wounded to resolute. I picked up my purse and walked to my car. The sky was turning orange and lavender, and the air had cooled. The cake still sat safely on the back seat. Maybe I would bring it inside. Maybe I wouldn't. I hadn't decided. But one thing was certain. I was no longer walking into their home defenseless. I started the engine. Tonight, they would learn that I wasn't as easy to erase as they believed. Because when I arrived at the house, the first person who greeted me wasn't Claire or Daniel. It was someone who changed the entire course of the night. The sun had nearly set by the time I pulled up to Daniel and Claire's house. Golden light washed over the front porch, and through the windows I could see silhouettes moving inside, laughing, talking, preparing the party I was supposed to simply walk into quietly. I turned off the car but didn't get out immediately. My fingers rested gently on my handbag, the one that now held the recording and the promissory note. 2 pieces of truth. 2 anchors of reality. I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. Then I opened the door. The neighborhood was quiet except for the faint hum of distant traffic. I walked slowly toward the house, cake in one hand, purse in the other, my heart beating so loudly I could almost hear it. Before I reached the front steps, the door opened. But it wasn't Claire, or Daniel, or even one of the children. It was Mark, Claire's younger brother. Mark had never been cruel to me, but he also never looked at me with genuine warmth. He treated me with that polite distance people use when they think someone is irrelevant. Today, however, something in his expression was different. "Miriam," he said, a little surprised. "You're here earlier than I thought." Earlier? I looked at my watch. I was 15 minutes late. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him just enough that I couldn't see inside the house. I nodded slowly. "Is everything all right?" He rubbed his palms together, looking conflicted. "Before you go in, I think you should know something." My chest tightened. "Know what?" He glanced back at the door again, lowering his voice. "There's been some talking inside. About you." Of course there had. This was exactly what I expected, but Mark didn't look smug or amused. He looked uneasy. "What did they say?" I asked. He hesitated. "Claire told everyone that you've been causing stress, that you're trying to interfere with the house purchase. She said you're bringing unnecessary drama today." Drama? That word again. That word they clung to any time I tried to speak truth. My jaw tightened slightly. "Did she mention what kind of drama?" Mark shook his head. "Just that you might try to make tonight about you." He looked at the cake box, then at my bag, then at me. His voice lowered even more. "I don't think it's fair, Miriam. Honestly." His tone surprised me. "Mark, why are you telling me this?" He looked down, shifting awkwardly. "Because I think they're taking advantage of Daniel." My breath stopped. My mind sharpened instantly. He looked at me again. "I don't know everything, but I've overheard some things too. Veronica's been bragging about a few things she shouldn't be proud of." A flicker of hope stirred in my chest. "What things?" I asked. Mark swallowed hard. "Just that she exaggerated the help she's giving. That Daniel's been easy to guide, and that Claire knows how to keep control." His voice cracked slightly at the last part, as though the words tasted bitter. I studied him carefully. His discomfort looked real, genuine. Mark wasn't the type to involve himself in drama, or to stand up to his mother or sister. The fact that he had stepped outside to warn me meant something was cracking inside their circle. "Thank you," I said softly. He nodded, then stepped aside. "I just thought you should be prepared before walking in." Prepared. Yes, that was one word for it. I looked toward the house again. Its warm lights, glowing like a stage waiting for the next act of a play. Except this time, I wasn't entering as the unaware, easily dismissed grandmother they thought I was. I had evidence. I had clarity, and now I had a witness. I walked toward the door. My pulse steadied. My breath deepened. Every step felt deliberate, grounded, necessary. Mark opened the door for me, but didn't step in first. He watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read, maybe pity, maybe concern, or maybe recognition that tonight was not going to unfold the way his mother planned. As I crossed the threshold, I heard the hum of voices inside, laughter, conversation, clinking glasses. They had no idea what was about to enter their perfectly arranged celebration. The truth was here. I wasn't leaving without being heard. But the moment I stepped into the living room, the first words Claire said hit me harder than anything I'd heard all day. The sound inside the house hit me first. Bright laughter, clinking glasses, the scrape of chairs, children squealing happily. A lively, cheerful chaos filled the living room. But beneath it all ran an undercurrent I could feel immediately. Tension. The kind that hides behind smiles. Mark stayed behind me as I stepped inside, almost like he was watching to see what would happen. Claire stood near the center of the room, arranging candles on her cake, her expensive designer bakery cake, the one meant to overshadow mine. She wore a fitted emerald dress, hair curled to perfection, makeup flawless. She didn't see me at first, but when she did, her smile froze on her face, then sharpened. "Oh," she said, her voice bright but strained. "You actually made it." Actually. As if my presence was unexpected. As if I had wandered somewhere I didn't belong. I held my cake gently at my side. "Of course I did." Her eyes flicked to the box, then back to my face, a polished expression sliding into place. She walked toward me with rehearsed grace, her heels tapping the floor in a steady rhythm. "Where's Daniel?" she asked, though she already knew. Her tone carried accusation disguised as innocence. "He had to take care of something," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "He'll be here soon." Claire's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She didn't like not knowing where he was, or what he might be discussing with me. "Well," she said sweetly, "I hope you're not bringing any unnecessary complications tonight. This is supposed to be a happy celebration." There it was. Complications. Drama. Another word for inconvenience. Before I could respond, Veronica swept in from the kitchen like a performer entering the spotlight. She wore a deep burgundy blouse and gold earrings that caught the light with every movement. "Miriam," she cooed, "how lovely that you were able to come." Her tone was honeyed. Her smile was a blade. I felt Mark stiffen behind me. I suddenly became aware of eyes on me, guests pausing conversations, children quieting slightly, heads turning. Not because I was important, but because they expected something. Claire and Veronica had already prepared the ground, planting the idea that I was entering with trouble in hand. I inhaled slowly. "Hello, Veronica," I said calmly. She stepped closer. Too close. "I hope you're not upset about earlier. We know how easily things can get misinterpreted." I saw it now, her plan. If I spoke the truth, she would paint it as confusion. If I confronted her, she would make it look like instability. If I stayed silent, she would continue erasing me piece by piece. But before I could respond, Claire motioned toward the kitchen. "You can put your cake in there," she said, gesturing toward the table where the pristine designer cake already sat, lit softly by decorative candles. "But we won't need two, so don't worry about setting it out." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. She didn't even try to hide the humiliation. I kept my eyes on her, unmoved. "We'll see." Her smile faltered ever so slightly. I walked past her, heading toward the kitchen, but before I reached it, little Ava, my granddaughter, ran up to me with bright eyes and open arms. "Grandma," she squealed. I bent down and embraced her tightly, warmth filling the cracks in my heart. "Hello, sweetheart." She looked at the cake in my hand. "Is that lemon cake?" "My favorite." Claire stiffened instantly. "Ava," she warned, but the child didn't hear her. "Can I have some later?" "Please," I smiled gently. "If your parents say yes." Ava grinned and ran off again, leaving a stunned hush behind her. Claire's expression cooled. "We'll handle what she eats." I set the cake safely on the counter, then turned to face them both. "Claire," I said quietly. "Veronica, I think we need to talk." The room seemed to hold its breath. A few guests leaned subtly closer, and that was exactly what they did not want. Veronica instantly stepped forward. "Miriam, let's not make a scene. We can talk after the celebration." "No," I said, my voice steady, calm, controlled. "We are going to talk now." Both women froze. The recording was in my purse. The promissory note was in my purse. The truth was ready, and I was done being erased. Because the next words I spoke didn't just stop the party, they shattered the room and exposed everything they had tried so hard to hide. The room seemed to shrink the moment I said those words. Conversations tapered off. Chairs scraped quietly. Even the children paused, sensing the shift in the air. The hum of the party stilled into silence, thick, watchful, uncertain. Claire's eyes widened, then quickly narrowed, her smile evaporating. "Miriam," she said tightly, "what exactly do you think you're doing?" I met her gaze evenly. "Telling the truth." A murmur rippled through the room. Veronica stepped in immediately, her voice dripping with artificial concern. "Oh, sweetheart, please. This isn't the time or place. You must be overwhelmed. Let us find you a seat." "I'm not overwhelmed," I replied calmly. "And I don't need a seat." She blinked. Unprepared for resistance, Claire crossed her arms. "Whatever you think you heard, I'm sure it's a misunderstanding." I opened my purse slowly, deliberately. The movement alone caused several people to lean in, anticipation thickening the space between us. "I didn't misunderstand anything," I said. "I heard exactly what you both said. About me, about the house, about the money." Claire's face drained of color. Veronica stiffened visibly. I pulled out the folded promissory note, not yet revealing the recording, and held it between my fingers. "You remember this?" I asked softly. "The document you had me sign when you told me Liam needed an urgent medical procedure." Claire's breath caught. "Miriam, please. You told me insurance wouldn't cover it. You told me he was in danger. You pushed me to act quickly." A wave of discomfort rippled among the guests. Claire forced a laugh, high, strained, brittle. "You're being dramatic. That was months ago. Why bring that up now?" "Because," I said, stepping forward, "your mother confirmed today that it was a lie. That he was never sick. That the emergency didn't exist." Veronica inhaled sharply. "Now listen." "No," I cut in. "You listen." Every eye in the room was on me now. every breath held. You took $10,000 from me under false pretenses. And today, I heard you planning to take $50,000 more from my son by promising a down payment you don't have." Gasps echoed softly. Claire's face twisted. You're twisting things." "Am I?" I asked. "Because I heard you say that once the deed was in your name, Daniel would have no control." Veronica stepped forward, her voice rising. "You have no proof." That was the moment the last thread of fear inside me snapped. I reached into my purse again, this time pulling out my phone. "I do," I said quietly. Veronica froze. Claire paled. I tapped the screen. The room filled with Veronica's voice. Clear, sharp, unmistakable. "Daniel believes I'm providing the $50,000. By the time he realizes I can't, the deed will be in Claire's name alone. He won't be able to undo it. She's already given everything she had. That land she sold. Gone. The $10,000. Gone. She's just an inconvenience we won't need soon. Once Claire has the house, he'll follow her lead. She's out of the picture." The recording played like a blade slicing through the party's carefully curated cheer. Every syllable rippled through the room, peeling away the facade they had built. When it ended, the silence was deafening. Claire looked like someone had knocked the wind from her. Veronica stood rigid, her face flaming with fury and humiliation. Guests exchanged shocked glances. Some whispered. Some stared. And then a voice spoke from the doorway. A familiar voice. "Mom?" Daniel's. He stood there, eyes wide, face pale, staring at the phone still glowing in my hand. I hadn't heard him come in. No one had. His gaze shifted from me, to Claire, to Veronica, then back to me. "What?" he said slowly, voice trembling. "Was that?" The tightness in my chest loosened. Just slightly, I turned to face him fully. "The truth, Daniel." He looked at Claire again, really looked. Her face crumpled under his stare. Tears filled her eyes, but they were too late, too practiced, too familiar. "Tell me it's not real," he whispered to her. Claire didn't answer. A crack formed in Daniel's expression, small, but deep. He took a step back from her, then another. His whole world was tilting, and the realization showed in every line of his face. But what he said next, that was what none of us expected, because Daniel's next words didn't just choose a side, they revealed a secret he had been hiding all along. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his breath shallow, his eyes flicking between Claire, Veronica, and the phone in my hand. The shock on his face slowly twisted into something heavier: confusion, disbelief, and the first tremors of betrayal. Everyone in the room had gone still. Even the children sensed the shift, retreating to the far side of the living room under the soft guidance of other relatives. The air felt thick, as though the truth itself had weight. Then Daniel spoke quietly, but with a tremor that ran through the entire room. "I need someone to explain," he said. "What I just heard." Claire rushed forward first, reaching for his arm. "Daniel, please, this is all being taken out of context. Your mother is twisting." He stepped back sharply, her hand falling into empty air. "Don't," he said. Just one word, but enough to stop her cold. His eyes returned to me. "Mom, how long have you known?" I swallowed gently. "Since this afternoon. I overheard them at the store." His gaze hardened at Claire. "Is it true? Did you lie to me about the emergency? Did you take money from her based on something that wasn't real?" Claire's face crumpled. She shook her head rapidly, tears spilling instantly too quickly. No, Daniel, you have to understand, I only said what I thought she needed to hear because what?" Daniel demanded. "Because you needed money." Her silence answered for her. Veronica stepped forward, voice steady but simmering. Daniel, sweetheart, don't let her manipulate you. She's trying to ruin your life because she feels threatened. Daniel let out a bitter laugh, a laugh that was one breath away from breaking. Threatened. He repeated hoarsely. Threatened by what, Veronica? By the fact that you were planning to put the house only in Claire's name. By the fact that you were going to leave me legally unprotected while I paid for everything. The room erupted in whispers. Claire's tears came harder. Daniel, please, you're my husband. You know, I would never. You would, he said. You did. His voice cracked. Then he turned back to me, slowly, like a man approaching a truth he feared would hurt more than the lies. Mum, I need to tell you something too. My heart stilled. He took a shaky breath. A while back, I started noticing little things. Expenses that didn't add up. Money missing. Decisions being made without me. I asked Claire about them, but she always had an explanation. Claire stiffened. Eyes widening. Daniel continued, swallowing hard. Then last month, I found messages between her and her mother about the house, about the finances, about removing you from the picture. The room inhaled sharply. You knew? I whispered. He nodded, shame washing over him. I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. I kept thinking I was imagining things, that marriage was just stressful and I needed to trust her more. That maybe I was being paranoid. He looked at me with eyes full of pain. When you called me earlier, Mum, I honestly thought you were repeating something you misunderstood. I didn't want to think you were right. My throat tightened. Daniel. He wiped a hand down his face. But hearing that recording, hearing exactly what they said, it confirmed everything I tried to ignore. Claire stepped forward desperately. Daniel, don't do this. You know she has always tried to turn you against me. You know your mother. Stop talking about my mother, Daniel snapped, voice shaking with anger. Stop. Just stop. Veronica opened her mouth to intervene, but Mark, startling everyone, stepped in front of her. Don't, he warned quietly. Not right now. Veronica froze, stunned. Daniel's attention returned to me. His voice softened, breaking around the edges. Mum, I'm so sorry. I should have listened when you tried to warn me. A tear finally escaped down my cheek, not from weakness, but from relief and heartbreak intertwining painfully. I reached for his hand. He let me hold it. I'm here, I whispered. I've been here. But just as the air shifted, just as truth began unraveling the lies, a sharp, shrill sound pierced the room. Claire had grabbed her phone. She stared at the screen, face draining of color, her hand trembling violently. What is it? Daniel demanded. Her lips parted, trembling. It's the lender. They rejected the application. The house isn't approved. Daniel's eyes widened. The room spun with questions. The truth had only just begun to surface. And what came out about the rejected house loan exposed a much darker secret Claire had been hiding from all of us. Claire stared at her phone as if it had personally betrayed her. Her fingers trembled so hard she nearly dropped it. The room, already thick with tension, grew impossibly still. Daniel stepped closer, voice low but firm. What do you mean the loan was rejected? Claire swallowed, her face pale. I don't know. I just got the message. They said the underwriting didn't pass final review. Daniel frowned, confusion and dread mixing in his expression. That doesn't make sense. Our credit is fine. We turned in everything they asked for. Claire shook her head violently. I don't understand it either. They said there were discrepancies. The word hung in the air like smoke. Veronica darted forward. Let me see that. She snatched the phone before Claire could react and scan the message. Her face tightened. Daniel noticed immediately. "What is it?" Veronica's voice faltered. "It says there are unresolved issues with financial history. Something about debts." The murmurs around the room swelled. Guests exchanged glances. Someone covered their mouth in shock. Daniel's expression hardened. "Debts? We don't have any major debts." Claire shut her eyes, shoulders shaking. "Daniel, please, just let me explain." "No," he said sharply. "You're going to tell me the truth. Right now." Claire opened her eyes. Tears welled up again, but this time they were different, less manipulated, more cornered. "I didn't think it mattered," she whispered. "I thought I could fix it before anyone knew." Daniel stepped back as if her words were physical blows. "Fix what?" Claire clasped her shaking hands together. I took out loans. A few. And a credit card." Daniel stared. "How many?" She squeezed her eyes shut. 3 loans and 4 credit cards." Veronica gasped. "Claire." Daniel went pale. "You told me you handled all the bills. You told me we were saving. How could you hide something like this?" Claire broke into sobs. "I didn't want you to think I was irresponsible. I kept thinking I could pay them down before the mortgage process went through. I never expected the bank to dig so deeply." Daniel's voice rose, raw and wounded. "Claire, this is why the loan was denied. You put us tens of thousands in debt without telling me." Claire covered her mouth with her hands. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks in dark trails. Veronica jumped in defensively. "Daniel, sweetheart, please understand you two are young. Mistakes happen. You shouldn't let one little mix-up derail your marriage." Daniel spun toward her. "A mix-up?" "She hid massive debt from me. She planned to put the house in her name alone. She let you manipulate her into cutting my mother out." His voice cracked at the end. Veronica froze, her face draining of its practiced composure. Mark's voice broke the silence. "Daniel, it's true. Mom pushed Claire into a lot of these decisions." Veronica whipped around, eyes blazing. "Mark, how dare you?" But he didn't back down. "No, I'm done covering for you. Claire isn't the only one who made mistakes." The room trembled with the weight of everything unfolding. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his breathing unsteady. He looked at Claire, his wife, the mother of his children. His voice dropped to a broken whisper. "Claire, you lied to me about money, about the house, about my mother. I trusted you." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "You didn't lose me because of mistakes. You lost me because of secrets." Claire reached for him instinctively, desperately, but he stepped back again. That moment, those few inches of distance between them, felt like the universe cracking open. "Wanted to speak, to reach out to my son, to comfort him. But I held back." This was his truth to face. Daniel turned toward the guests. "Everyone, I think the party is over." People gathered their things awkwardly, whispering as they moved toward the door. The lively celebration had dissolved into heavy, stunned quiet. Within minutes, only the family remained. Daniel turned to me, his voice steadier. "Mom, I need to talk to you privately." Claire's eyes widened. "Daniel," he didn't look at her. "Not now." My heart pounded, unsure of what he would say next, whether he was reaching for me or retreating again. I nodded gently. "Of course." We stepped into the hallway, away from the tear-streaked faces and fractured illusions. Daniel took a shaky breath, and then he said something I had not expected, something that changed everything. Because the truth Daniel revealed to me in the hallway wasn't about Claire or the loan, it was about himself. The hallway felt too narrow, too quiet, its beige walls suddenly echoing with all the tension that had spilled out of the living room. Daniel rubbed his palms together, pacing once before stopping directly in front of me. His eyes looked older than they had an hour ago. Not from age, but from truth finally catching up to him. "Mum," he said softly, "I need to tell you something I should have told you a long time ago." A strange chill crawled through me. "All right," I whispered. "I'm listening." He exhaled shakily and leaned against the wall, as if his legs weren't fully steady. "I haven't been okay," he started. "For a while." My heartbeat stumbled. "I thought you were stressed," I said gently. "Work, the kids, the house." He shook his head. "It's more than that. I've been anxious. Constantly. I've been losing sleep. Having panic attacks, real ones. The kind that make your chest feel like it's caving in." My breath caught. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I didn't want you to," he said, voice cracking. "And Claire, she said I just needed to push through it. That it wasn't a big deal. That seeing a therapist would make me look weak." I closed my eyes briefly, pain pressing behind my ribs. "Claire. Of course. Control disguised as support. Minimization disguised as concern." "Mom," Daniel continued, "it got worse when we started the house process. She and her mother made me feel like everything was my responsibility, that if I didn't go along with their plan, I was failing as a husband, as a father." Tears stung my eyes. "You've been carrying all of that alone." He nodded, jaw tight. "And I didn't want to admit that I couldn't breathe under all of it. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away." I stepped closer. "Daniel, you should never have had to face that alone." He swallowed hard. "That's why. When you said we needed to talk earlier, I panicked. I thought you were adding one more thing to the pile I was already drowning under." "I wasn't," I whispered. "I was trying to pull you out of it." He let out a shaky, humorless laugh. "I know that now." He rubbed his face. "I thought Claire kept things from me because she was overwhelmed. I didn't realize she was shaping my decisions for me, feeding me only what she wanted me to know." "That's not love, Daniel," I said softly. "That's control." His eyes glistened. "I kept doubting myself," he said. "Every time I questioned something, she'd tell me I was overreacting. She'd tell me you were dramatic. She'd tell me to stop trusting my own instincts." The words twisted a knife in my heart. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was manipulation. He looked up at me, his expression vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since he was small. "Mum, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you sooner. You were right. About everything." I placed my hands on his cheeks gently. "Daniel, I don't need an apology. I just need you safe, whole and aware." His lips trembled into something close to a smile, broken, but hopeful. "I don't know what comes next," he admitted. "The house, Claire, the kids, everything feels like it's collapsing." "It's not collapsing," I said. "It's opening." He frowned slightly. "Opening?" "Yes," I said. "Sometimes the truth breaks things first, so something real can be built after." Daniel stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, absorbing the words like someone who needed to believe them. Before either of us could say more, a sudden crash echoed from the living room, glass shattering, voices rising. Daniel stiffened. "What was that?" We hurried back toward the noise, footsteps echoing through the hallway. As we approached the living room, we saw Claire, face twisted with rage, standing over the shattered remains of a glass bowl. Veronica was beside her, gripping her arm, whispering something urgently. But Claire wasn't looking at the glass. She was looking at Ava, their daughter, who stood a few feet away. trembling, tears spilling down her cheeks. What happened? Daniel demanded, rushing forward. But when Ava saw us, she ran straight toward me. Not Claire, not Daniel, me. She grabbed my waist tightly, sobbing into my blouse, and the words she choked out froze the entire room. Because what my granddaughter whispered into my ear exposed the final secret Claire had desperately hoped no one would ever discover. Ava clung to me so tightly, her little fingers dug into my blouse. Her small body shook with each sob, her breath trembling against my chest. I crouched down to her level, brushing her hair gently away from her face. Ava, sweetheart, I whispered. What's wrong? What happened? She sniffled hard, wiping her nose on the back of her hand before looking at me with wide, fearful eyes. Mommy yelled at me, she whispered, voice cracking. She said it was my fault. She said everything was my fault. The room froze. Daniel's face went white. Ava, what do you mean? What was your fault? Ava's lower lip trembled. She said I ruined everything when I told Grandma something earlier. My heart stopped. Told me? I asked quietly. Told me what, sweetheart? She looked down, twisting her fingers. I told you lemon cake was my favorite. And Mommy said you would try to make me like you more. She said you would try to take me from her. I felt the world tilt. Claire's face drained of all color. Ava, she hissed, her voice sharp as glass. But Daniel stepped between them instantly, fury burning in his eyes. Don't you dare raise your voice at her. Ava continued, tears streaming. And she said, her voice broke again. She said if the house didn't get approved, it would be because Daddy is bad with money. And Grandma makes everything worse. I reached for her hands. She squeezed them tightly. And she said, Ava whispered, that she wishes Daddy didn't have us anymore. The room shattered. Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Ava, that is not what I... But the child sobbed harder. You said it when you were mad on the phone. I heard you. Daniel staggered back like he'd been struck. You? His voice cracked in disbelief. You said that? Claire shook her head frantically, desperation spilling from her like water. Daniel, I was frustrated. I didn't mean... You told our daughter I shouldn't have her. His voice rose, ragged and wounded. You said I shouldn't have my children. Claire grabbed his arm. Daniel, please. He jerked away from her. No, this ends now. Veronica intervened, taking Claire's hand. This child is confused. She doesn't... But Mark, quiet, steady, uncharacteristically brave, spoke up from behind us. She's not confused, he said firmly. Claire said those things. I heard her too. Every head turned. Veronica's face twisted. Mark, you ignorant child. No, he snapped. Not this time, Mum. Silence fell like a curtain. Daniel looked at Claire long, hollow, devastated. You lied about money. You lied about my mother. You manipulated our finances. You tried to cut her out of our lives. And now this... His voice broke. I can't trust you. I can't. Claire dropped to her knees, clutching her hair. Please, Daniel, please, don't do this. But he didn't move toward her. He moved toward Ava and Liam. He gathered both children close, holding them tightly, protectively, as Claire watched with unraveling eyes. Then he turned to me. Not as a son desperate to defend his choices, but as a man who had finally seen reality without the fog of manipulation. Mum, he said softly, voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry. For everything. I wrapped an arm around him and the children, feeling their trembling bodies press into me. It's all right, I whispered. We're here now. We tell the truth now. We heal now. Claire cried hysterically, Veronica fuming behind her, but neither of them stepped forward. Their power, the grip they once had had, dissolved the moment the truth stood unhidden in the open. Daniel straightened, wiping his face. I'm taking the kids. We're going to my mother's for now. Claire sobbed harder. Daniel, don't. But he was done. He walked out with the children. And I followed him, cake in one hand, purse in the other, leaving behind the wreckage of lies that had finally collapsed under their own weight. Outside, the night air felt cool, almost cleansing. Daniel helped the children into the car, then turned to me. What now? He whispered. I squeezed his hand gently. Now, I said, we rebuild. Carefully, honestly, together. He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. For the first time in years, I saw my son clearly, not a man under someone else's shadow, but a man stepping into his own truth. And as we drove away from the house that had nearly become a trap, I realized something powerful. I hadn't just reclaimed my place in my son's life. I had helped him reclaim himself. But endings are never truly endings, and what happened in the weeks that followed would test our strength, loyalty, and forgiveness more than any of us expected. If you like my story, please like this videos. Subscribe channel and comment below what kind of story you like this. I will find for you real stories.